Montgomery, Alabama, a city renowned for its rich history, where red brick roads lead to centuries-old churches. In the heart of the city, New Hope Ministries shines as a beacon of faith, where believers often seek salvation and solace. Inside the church, Alia Hill always presents a perfect image. Her smooth, black hair is neatly styled, her eyes sparkle with faith, and her smile is radiant as if she knows no pain. But with just a glance, if you look closely, you'll see the weariness hidden deep in her eyes, as if she carries a heavy burden that no one knows about. Alia is not just the associate pastor, she is the spiritual pillar of the entire community. Young women come to her seeking advice on love and family. The elderly ask her to pray for their children and grandchildren. Alia always listens, always cares, but she has no one to share her own burdens with. Marcus Hill, Alia's husband, is an elder of the church, a man that everyone considers perfect, with a height of over 6 feet, a muscular build, and a deep, resonant voice. He not only attracts the attention of the parishioners, but also earns the admiration of many. Marcus is seen as a symbol of devotion, someone who doesn't hesitate to work late to serve the community. But Marcus was not always the ideal man that people imagine. In his early years, he had a turbulent childhood. His father, Marcus Sr., a deacon at another church, was known to be strict to the point of being cruel. The beatings from his father taught Marcus that strength and control were the keys to survival. Even as an adult with his own family, the darkness from that past still follows Marcus. He cannot accept anyone or anything beyond his control, and this begins to manifest in his relationship with Alia. Alia entered into marriage with Marcus not just for love, but also for hope. After a failed marriage before, she thought Marcus was someone who could bring her stability. He was the only one who made her feel protected. But after they married, Alia realized that Marcus's protection was not what she had imagined. It was like a gilded cage, where all her actions were monitored. Initially, Marcus only set small limits. Alia, I don't think you should go out with James too much. Your son needs to see that the new family is the priority. She complied, thinking it was good for the family. But then, the demands grew more frequent. He asked her to change her work schedule, limit contact with male members of the church, and even checked her phone weekly. Alia began to feel suffocated, but she dared not speak out. Sarah Thompson, Alia's best friend, was the first to notice the change. Alia is not herself anymore, Sarah said during a conversation with Rebecca, the youth coordinator of the church. She doesn't laugh as much as she used to, and she always seems to be afraid of something. Sarah decided to talk to Alia. Are you okay? She asked one afternoon after work. Alia paused, her eyes tearful, but she just smiled. I'm fine. It's just work pressure. But Sarah didn't believe her. I've seen the way Marcus looks at you during meetings, as if you're not allowed to say anything different from him. Alia quickly dismissed it. He's just worried about me. It's love. Sarah. Sarah wanted to believe her friend, but her intuition told her something was wrong. Marcus and Alia still maintained a perfect image on social media. Photos of them praying together, doing charity work, and organizing services made everyone think they were the ideal couple. But no one knew that each photo was a setup by Marcus. We need to post photos so that people see that we're still happy, he said to Alia once after an argument. Alia reluctantly agreed, because she knew that refusing. Alia never thought she would find love again after her first painful marriage. When she met Marcus at a religious retreat in 2018, the first thing she noticed about him was his confidence. Marcus was not only handsome, but also had a way of talking that made her feel safe. He called her a miracle and always said that God had brought them together. During the 3-day retreat, Marcus was always by Alia's side, helping her with every little thing, from making coffee to adjusting the microphone before a prayer. Those small gestures touched her heart, melting away the fear and caution she carried from her previous marriage. When Marcus proposed just 4 months into their relationship, Alia hesitated slightly, but he persuaded her with emotional words. We are destined for each other. Can't you see that God has ordained everything? Alia, swept away by love like a raging current, nodded her agreement. In the first few months after the wedding, Alia felt like she was living in a dream. Marcus was always there, loving her, caring for her young son, James, and wholeheartedly supporting her work at the church. But as time passed, small cracks began to appear in the perfect facade of her new life. One evening, Alia went out to dinner with a group of close friends from college. The laughter and warmth of their reunion filled the room, but her phone kept buzzing. It was Marcus. "Where are you? When will you be home? Who are you with?" His voice carried concern, but there was something in his tone, a sharpness, that made her feel less cared for and more monitored. Then came his comments about her clothing. One Sunday morning, Alia picked out a fitted blue dress she had always loved. Marcus eyed her critically before saying, "You don't need to wear tight dresses like that to attract other people's attention." Alia, believing he was just looking out for her, began to change her wardrobe. Slowly, her style shifted to something more modest, even plain, choices that no longer felt entirely her own. The control extended further. Marcus started suggesting changes to her schedule, encouraging her to cut back on personal activities and devote more time to the church. At first, Alia welcomed the idea. It seemed like a good way to refocus her priorities. But before long, she realized she was losing the freedom that had once been an essential part of who she was. Every time Alia expressed an opinion contrary to Marcus's in church meetings, he would look at her with a cold gaze. Once, when she proposed a fundraising program for orphans, Marcus cut her off in front of the entire leadership. "We should focus on bigger projects, not small things like that," he said, his voice gentle but authoritative. After the meeting, Alia questioned him. "You didn't need to embarrass me in front of everyone like that." Marcus just shrugged. "I'm just doing what's best for the church. You need to learn to accept that sometimes I know better." Alia began to feel she was no longer respected as before, but she told herself, "This is marriage. I need to be patient." Sarah Thompson, Alia's best friend, was the first to notice the change. Previously, Alia was always laughing and cheerful at every meeting and event, but now, she looked like a shadow of her former self, silent, cautious, and sometimes as if she were afraid of something. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked one afternoon while both sat in a cafe near the church. Alia shook her head, smiling faintly. "It's just too much work." Sarah didn't believe her. "You're not the same as before." "Alia, I see the way Marcus looks at you. I see that you're afraid to say something wrong. That's not you. He just wants what's best for me," Alia said, but her voice trembled. Sarah didn't press further, but in her heart, she knew Marcus was the problem. Marcus always made sure that his and Alia's image on social media was perfect. Every week, he posted photos of them praying together or doing charity work, with captions like, "We are blessed by God. Family is everything." Those photos received hundreds of likes and comments, but for Alia, they were just a mask. After each post, Marcus would often turn to her and say, "See, people admire us. It's our responsibility to keep this image beautiful." Alia nodded, but in her heart, she just wanted to scream. One evening, as Alia sat on the sofa, watching the television screen, she heard the message chime from Marcus's phone. He was in the bathroom, and the phone was lying right on the table. A message popped up, "I miss you. When can we be together without hiding?" Alia froze. She didn't dare open the message, but just seeing the sender's name, Jasmine, she understood everything. That evening, Alia didn't say anything, but in her heart, everything had changed. Jasmine Reed was a new face at New Hope Ministries. Only 26 years old, she possessed youthful enthusiasm and eyes that sparkled with admiration for Marcus Hill, the man she always called a respected mentor. Jasmine joined the church as a volunteer coordinator, and soon, she became an indispensable part of the church's activities. She often stayed late after work, diligently helping Marcus organize events or prepare materials. For Jasmine, Marcus was not only a religious leader, but also the ideal man, strong, decisive, and charming. But Jasmine didn't know she was stepping into a dangerous spiral, where wrong decisions would change her life forever. Initially, the relationship between Marcus and Jasmine revolved around work, but Marcus, who always had the ability to attract and manipulate, quickly recognized Jasmine's admiration for him. He started praising her more often, sometimes with compliments that he knew would make her blush. "Jasmine, you truly are the light of this church. I don't know how I could manage everything without you," Marcus said one evening when they were organizing materials. Jasmine smiled, her cheeks flushed. "Thank you, Pastor Hill. I just want to help you as much as I can." Conversations about work gradually shifted to personal heart-to-hearts. Marcus told Jasmine that he felt trapped in his marriage with Alia. He described Alia as cold and no longer caring about him. Jasmine, naive and easily influenced, believed every word Marcus said. Jasmine was not only attracted to Marcus's strength, but also by what he said about his marriage. During these private moments, Marcus often painted a picture of a husband trapped in a loveless marriage. "Alia doesn't understand me anymore," he said during one secret rendezvous. "She's changed, closed off, and cold. I don't know if we can save anything anymore." These words struck a chord with Jasmine's deepest fear, the fear that she would be forever left behind, unloved. She found herself sympathizing with Marcus and believing he deserved a new chance. Their relationship quickly crossed the line. At first, they were just late-night messages after work, but soon, they started meeting at small coffee shops far from the church, then at hotels on the outskirts of Montgomery. Marcus carefully chose places where he thought no one could recognize them. During a meeting at a hotel, Jasmine asked, "Are you really unhappy with Alia?" Marcus sighed, looking at Jasmine with a sorrowful expression. "Jasmine, I love you, but you have to understand that Alia and I have not been husband and wife in the true sense for a long time. I am with her only out of responsibility to the church." Jasmine felt her heart melt. She believed their love was destiny. But Jasmine's blind love couldn't completely hide the worries in her heart. Marcus often talked about getting rid of Alia without ever going into details. In one meeting, Jasmine said, "If you really want to be with me, why don't you leave her?" Marcus, with his skill, quickly soothed her. "You don't understand, Jasmine. A divorce would ruin my reputation in the entire church. But trust me, I have a plan. Just be patient a little longer." Those words were enough to soothe Jasmine, but in her heart, there was still a vague anxiety. While Marcus and Jasmine were lost in their secret relationship, Alia began to piece together unusual events. The late-night calls, the hotel bills, and Marcus's cold attitude made it impossible to ignore. One evening, when Marcus was asleep, Alia decided to check his phone. Her heart thumped as she opened the messaging app. The conversations between Marcus and Jasmine appeared like knives stabbing into her heart. "I miss you. Just wait a little longer. Everything will be resolved." One message read. Alia held the phone, tears streaming down her face. She felt like her whole world was collapsing. The next day, Alia decided to confront Marcus. "Do you have anything you want to tell me, Marcus?" she asked, her voice calm but her eyes full of anger. Marcus, surprised by her bluntness, tried to deny it. "Alia, what are you talking about? You're imagining things." But when Alia showed him the messages, Marcus couldn't lie anymore. He admitted that he was charmed by Jasmine, but he tried to justify it as just a temporary mistake. Alia didn't believe him. "You betrayed me, not only as a husband, but also as a pastor," she yelled. Marcus, instead of repenting, became angry. "If you can't forgive, that's your problem," he said, his eyes as cold as if he had never loved her. Meanwhile, Jasmine began to notice inconsistencies in Marcus. He promised a lot, but never fulfilled anything. When Jasmine asked about their plans, he always said that waiting was necessary. Jasmine began to feel uneasy. She didn't want to be the reason for destroying Marcus's family, but she also couldn't bear to continue living in the shadows. "Marcus, I can't wait forever," she said during a meeting. "If you really love me, you have to do something." Marcus took her hand. His eyes became dangerous. "Jasmine, you don't understand. I'm doing everything for us. Trust me, everything will end soon." The word "end" was not just a promise to Jasmine, but also a thought in Marcus's mind. He felt cornered. With Alia growing suspicious, Jasmine demanding, and pressure from the church. Marcus believed that there was only one way to solve the problem. Alia had to disappear. He began researching online how to make an accident look real, how to clean blood effectively in countries without an extradition treaty with the US. Each search was a step in preparing for his dark plan. On the night of April 15th, 2021, Montgomery was engulfed in a violent spring storm. The wind howled through the deserted streets, making the trees sway, while lightning flashed across the dark sky. For most residents, it was just a normal rainy night, but inside the house at 1247 Maple Grove Lane, a tragedy was predetermined. Alia sat in the living room, her eyes staring at the phone screen. She had just finished writing a message to Sarah. "I need to talk to you. Something isn't right between me and Marcus, but I'm afraid." She was about to press the send button, but then hesitated. An invisible fear prevented her from completely opening up to anyone. Upstairs, Marcus was in his office, scrolling through emails and arranging the fake invoices he had created to hide his financial embezzlement of the church. Next to his desk was a trash bag, a few bottles of cleaning chemicals, and a small notebook where he recorded every detail of tonight's plan. On the night of April 15th, 2021, Montgomery was engulfed in a violent spring storm. The wind howled through the deserted streets, making the trees sway, while lightning flashed across the dark sky. For most residents, it was just a normal rainy night, but inside the house at 1247 Maple Grove Lane, a tragedy was predetermined. Alia sat in the living room, her eyes staring at the phone screen. She had just finished writing a message to Sarah. "I need to talk to you. Something isn't right between me and Marcus, but I'm afraid." She was about to press the send button, but then hesitated. An invisible fear prevented her from completely opening up to anyone. Upstairs, Marcus was in his office, scrolling through emails and arranging the fake invoices he had created to hide his financial embezzlement of the church. Next to his desk was a trash bag, a few bottles of cleaning chemicals, and a small notebook where he recorded every detail of tonight's plan. Marcus felt cornered. Alia's words were not just resistance, but also a threat to his entire plan. In a moment of madness, he lunged forward and grabbed her throat. "You think you can destroy me?" Marcus hissed through gritted teeth, his hand tightening as Alia struggled. She clawed at his hands, leaving deep scratches. But Marcus didn't stop. She fell to the floor, her eyes gradually losing light. In the silent house, only Marcus's ragged breathing mingled with the howling wind outside. As Marcus tightened his grip around Alia's throat, his mind went blank. Memories of how his father controlled him, the failures he tried to bury, all came to a head in a moment of insanity. When Alia stopped struggling, Marcus released his grip, staring down at her lifeless body with emotionless eyes. Instead of remorse, he felt a strange sense of relief. He told himself that it was necessary, that there was no other choice. But this relief lasted only a moment, before being replaced by fear and the thought that he had to cover up his actions at all costs. Marcus stood there, staring at Alia's lifeless body. A part of him felt remorse, but a larger part was fear and the need to act quickly. He dragged her body up and placed it on a tarp that he had prepared beforehand. In his mind, each step of his plan was neatly organized like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. He drove the Ford F-150 out of the house, heading towards the woods on the outskirts of Wetumpka, where he knew that no one would find her. The rain fell heavily, hiding all the traces. But Marcus didn't know that security cameras from nearby houses had recorded his car leaving at 11:42 p.m. At the disposal site, he dragged Alia's body out of the car and hid it under dry branches, dirt, and debris. He stood there for a while, his eyes staring thoughtfully into the darkness, before returning to the car. Around 1 a.m., Marcus called 911 with an emotional voice. "My wife left the house after an argument. I'm worried she might be in danger." The operator asked, "What time did she leave?" "Sir?" "About midnight," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice calm. When the police arrived at his house, Marcus maintained his perfect demeanor, calm, seemingly worried but not too panicked. He told the story of how they argued about minor financial issues, and that Alia had gone out. She was wearing a blue raincoat and had her purse, he said. But when asked further, his answers started to contradict each other. The police were suspicious but didn't have enough evidence to search the house. They left, leaving Marcus with a slight smile on his lips. He thought he had overcome a major hurdle. Detective James Wilson, a man with eyes as sharp as blades and a measured demeanor, was not easily fooled. When he stepped into Marcus Hill's house, he immediately felt the awkwardness in the atmosphere. The house was too perfect, too clean, as if it had been meticulously prepared to hide something. In the living room, Marcus sat on the armchair, his hands clenching his knees. "She left," he said, his voice low but unable to hide the loneliness. "We just argued about petty things. Then she left." "What did she take with her?" Wilson asked, his eyes not leaving Marcus's face. "A blue raincoat and a purse," Marcus replied, but his eyes darted in a different direction, as if searching for the answer in the air. Wilson nodded, noting every detail, but in his heart, he knew that these words didn't add up. He could sense the lies like a taste, something lingering in the stifling air of this house. In the following days, Wilson and his investigation team began to piece together the details. Video from security cameras around Marcus's house revealed a truth that contradicted his statements. There was no sign of Alia leaving the house that night, but Marcus's Ford F-150 was. At 11:42 p.m., it left, and at 1:03 a.m., it returned. Meanwhile, an anonymous call from the Wedomka area gave Wilson an important clue. "I saw car lights in the woods that night," the voice on the phone whispered, "and I think he was hiding something." With the new information, the investigation team quickly launched a search in the woods east of Wedomka. They walked through each trail, flashlights illuminating the trees, until an officer shouted, "Here!" Alia's body was found under dry branches and soil. She was still wearing the navy blue dress that she had worn to Easter service, but now it was wrinkled and covered in mud. On her neck were bruises, the marks of a desperate struggle. Wilson stood there, looking at Alia's body. His eyes were cold, but his heart was stirred. He knew that this woman had suffered too much, and that justice was now the only thing that could restore her final dignity. Irrefutable evidence. As the forensics team began to thoroughly examine Marcus's house, they discovered critical pieces of the puzzle. Or on the bedroom carpet, luminol revealed traces of blood that could not be seen by the naked eye. Although he tried to clean it, Marcus could not erase the traces of the truth. DNA confirmed that it was Alia's blood. There in the trunk of the Ford F-150, they found blue carpet fibers, the same type as the carpet in the bedroom. At the Home Depot bill, industrial trash bags and cleaning chemicals purchased just hours before Alia's death. This evidence like knives cutting into the story that Marcus had tried to fabricate. Wilson sat in his office, piecing everything together, and he knew that Marcus's game was over. Marcus's phone and computer were fertile ground for the investigators. In his browser history, phrases like "how to dispose of a body without leaving a trace" and "how to clean DNA" made Wilson feel a chill down his spine. Marcus had not only killed his wife, but he had also prepared for this crime with careful calculation. But what infuriated Wilson the most was Marcus's messages with Jasmine. "Just wait a little longer. Everything will end soon," Marcus wrote in a message sent the afternoon Alia went missing. Jasmine, in her blind love, didn't realize she had become an accomplice in a tragedy she never intended. When Jasmine was summoned for questioning, she tried to remain calm, but when confronted with her messages, Marcus's words, and the photos of Alia's body, she collapsed. "I didn't know he would do this," Jasmine said, her voice trembling. "He just said that he needed to get away from her. I thought he was just talking about divorce." Jasmine provided further messages, the emails that Marcus had sent her. One email read, "We will start a new life. Everything is prepared." That was the final piece of evidence, ending any chance of Marcus escaping conviction. As Jasmine recounted her story, everyone in the courtroom looked at her with a mix of sympathy and anger. But Jasmine herself was struggling with her own pain. She couldn't forgive herself for believing Marcus's words that he would leave Alia and that they would build a new life together. He made me believe that our love was right, she said, tears streaming down her face. But now I realize I was just a tool in his plan. Jasmine left the witness stand with heavy shoulders. She was no longer the naive girl from the beginning who stepped into the New Hope Church, but a woman destroyed by blind love and lies. As news of the case spread, the Montgomery community was in shock. Those who had once admired Marcus couldn't believe that he was a murderer. New Hope Ministries organized a large prayer service to remember Alia. Hundreds of people came, placing white flowers and candles on the steps. She deserved to live, to be loved, one woman said, tears rolling down her cheeks. She didn't deserve this end. On the day of Marcus's arrest, he no longer had the same composure as before. When the officers handcuffed him, he shouted, "I'm not guilty. This was an accident." But no one believed his words anymore. Wilson watched as Marcus was led away, his eyes showing determination. Alia will have justice, he said to himself. The Montgomery County courtroom was packed, from the back rows to the seats close to the witness stand. All eyes were on the man sitting at the defense table, Marcus Hill. He no longer had the confident look he usually wore. His dark suit couldn't hide the fatigue on his face. His eyes dark-circled as if he hadn't slept for many nights. But the most noticeable thing was his hands, constantly twisting together as a sign of anxiety. Outside, the crowd gathered, holding signs, "Justice for Alia," "Betrayer of Faith," and "We will not forgive." They didn't shout, but the atmosphere was full of outrage. Marcus had not only killed his wife, he had betrayed the entire community that had placed their faith in him. Prosecutor Sarah Henderson stepped up to the podium, small in stature but with a powerful voice. "Today, we are not here just to judge a murder. We are here to expose a calculated conspiracy, carried out by a man who was supposed to protect, to love, the woman standing beside him." On the second day of the trial, the atmosphere in the courtroom became stifling when forensic Dr. Robert Patterson took the stand. He brought photos of Alia's body, but what made everyone gasp was the way he described her death. She was strangled for about 2 to 3 minutes, Patterson said, his voice deep but firm. This was not an accidental or impulsive act. It was a premeditated act, requiring strength and stability. The entire courtroom fell silent. Some people burst into tears when they saw the photos displayed on the screen. Alia's hands bruised, as if she had tried to fight to her last breath. On the third day, Jasmine Reed took the stand. She wore a simple white shirt, her face pale and her eyes swollen. Jasmine tried to remain calm, but her voice trembled as she recounted her relationship with Marcus. "He said he loved me," she began, her eyes looking directly at Marcus. "He said that Alia was the one blocking our way, that she no longer loved him. I believed him. I believed that he just wanted to leave her. Nothing more." Prosecutor Henderson approached Jasmine, her voice gentle but sharp. "Jasmine, did he ever talk about ending everything?" Jasmine took a deep breath, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said, her voice almost inaudible. "He said that without her, we could start over." The entire courtroom shuddered. Some people shook their heads in outrage, while Marcus sat motionless, his hands clenching until they were white. Prosecutor Henderson left no gaps. She presented a series of evidence, each one like a knife cutting deeper into Marcus's story. At the Home Depot bill, images of Marcus buying industrial trash bags and cleaning chemicals, just hours before Alia's death, were displayed on the big screen. Of the search history on his computer, keywords such as "how to clean DNA," "dispose of a body without leaving a trace," and "countries without extradition treaties with the US." And messages with Jasmine, calculated lines like, "Just wait a little longer. Everything will end soon." The jury sat there, not daring to blink. Each detail led to the same conclusion. Marcus had been planning to kill his wife for a long time. Testimony from Alia's diary. The final witness was Sarah Thompson, Alia's best friend. She held a small notebook, Alia's diary. When Sarah began to read, the entire courtroom was silent. "March 3rd, 2021, she read. "Marcus is becoming more and more distant. He controls everything I do, and I feel like I'm not myself anymore. I'm afraid. but I still believe that love can change everything." Sarah's voice choked, but she continued. April 10th, 2021. "I don't know how much longer I can endure. Marcus is no longer the man I love. He is a darkness that surrounds me." The entire courtroom was in tears. Even Prosecutor Henderson had to pause to take a deep breath before continuing. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. When the judge declared, his voice echoed in the absolute silence. "Marcus Hill is found guilty of first-degree murder." Marcus didn't show any emotion. He sat motionless, his eyes blank, but his coldness couldn't hide the truth that his life was over. Judge Carl Moore sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. "You have not only betrayed your wife, but also betrayed the trust of the entire community," he said. "Your actions are unforgivable." As the sentence was pronounced, Marcus could no longer maintain his usual composure. He stared at his hands, those hands that had once preached and helped others, but were also the same hands that had taken his wife's life. In his head, images of Alia, Jasmine, and himself as a perfect pastor flashed through his mind like a torn movie. "How did I come to this?" he asked himself. But no one but himself could answer that question. Marcus had become the very thing he once hated, a person obsessed with power and willing to destroy anything to maintain it. After the trial, Alia's parents founded the Alia Hill Foundation, which supports victims of domestic violence. The foundation quickly became a leading voice in educating the community on how to identify and respond to abuse. James, Alia's son, under the guidance of his grandparents and a child psychologist, gradually overcame the pain of losing his mother. He grew up with a strong heart, always reminding everyone, "My mother fought to her last breath. I will live to protect others." Montgomery gradually regained its peace, but Alia's story still lived on. White flowers continued to be placed in front of New Hope Ministries, as a reminder that justice may come late, but it will always come.